She's like the female James Bond.
She's safety chick.
The safety chick.
I love that safety chick. That's what
She
I
calls
it.
herself the safety chick.
I was a stalking victim, having to learn every possible aspect of personal safety to stay alive.
Safety chick. We love her.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to this episode of Safety Chick Rules, powered by Blue Line Solutions. And as we know, Blue Line Solutions is a traffic safety company. And again, I work with them all over the country. I work as a government specialist and meet with all different kinds of organizations and politicians, all with the understanding and mission of making our streets safer. And a few months ago, I was in Sacramento, California, testifying with a panel at the state Senate on behalf of SB 1297 for the city of Malibu, which is a pilot program for speed zones on Pacific Coast Highway. Now, I don't know if any of you listeners or viewers have ever been or are familiar with Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, but it is a gorgeous stretch of road. But with that is also a very incredibly high rate of accidents and pedestrian deaths because it is a highway. And the highway goes through, while it starts out in different parts as a highway, it goes through the beautiful city and along the coastline of Malibu, where there is tons of residential, restaurants, surfers, and it's just these speed zones need to happen. So when I was up there testifying on behalf of Blue Line, I met an incredible man by the name of Michel Shane, and I thought, who better than to come on this podcast and explain the need. And again, this podcast is all about mission-driven, helping to keep people safe. And it's ordinary people doing extraordinary things, all with a mission to fight crime and keep people safe. So, Michel, thank you so much for being here. I want to first begin by having you tell our listeners and viewers what your background is and what you do.
Thanks so much for having me on, Kathleen. It's an honor. I am a filmmaker. I started in a long time ago, before electricity, in the 80s, in video, and kind of worked my way through the film business, and have created some interesting films. And I'm a creator.
Okay, but don't be shy. You need to tell the audience what movies you've been involved with.
Oh, so I recognized Catch Me If You Can when it was a book and fought for about 11 years to get it made. I, Robot, North Fork, those are my quote-unquote claim to fame. But as I like to say when I go to cocktail parties, if they still have those these days, you start with the films that were least known, and then you'd see the eyes glazing over and people looking over like, who else can I talk to that's interesting? And then I throw in one of those pictures, and all of a sudden, I was an interesting guy.
Oh my God, I totally know that one. Yeah, exactly. Welcome to Malibu.
Well, it's the world.
Exactly,
you know,
exactly.
Yeah. So in 2010, actually April 3rd, 2010, my life changed and my mission changed. Not that I don't make movies anymore or things like that. I'm still very much involved in all that and constantly developing projects. But on April 3rd in 2010, my youngest daughter, Emily, was targeted by a speeding driver and murdered on PCH. And we spent 2 years fighting to have him incarcerated. Well, first trial was hung jury. Second trial, he was finally incarcerated. And now we've spent the last 3 years at parole hearings to try to keep him incarcerated. And it's not that I'm a vindictive person. If it's an accident and we all make mistakes, then so be it. It's an accident. Right. But this was never an accident. There was no remorse. there never has been any remorse. There's gaming the system type remorse to try to get out of prison. So what happened at the first parole hearing is they said, you can come back in 3 years. He was then back in parole a year later. And at that parole hearing, they granted him parole. But thank God, Governor Newsom kind of looked at it, or his team looked at it and said, no, you're not ready. And they denied it. And then again, this past October.
But wait, before, and thank God they did that, and I know there's more. Take us back so that the listeners and viewers can really, understand what happened to Emily. Take us back to that night, that day. She was at a sleepover, wasn't she, at a neighbor's? So take us back from the very beginning to that day and talk us through the whole incident.
So it was spring break. It was Easter weekend. She had had a sleepover at a girlfriend's house. Was out at a friend's house playing, doing what a 13-year-old teenage girl does, which I probably don't want to know about.
Right.
I just hope she was having fun. And my wife and I, it was a Saturday, the day before Easter Sunday. We ran out and went to the gym and had some errands to do, and we're planning to go to a movie that night. And when we got home, Ellen called Emily and asked her what was up and what she was doing. And Emily said, I want to come home. So I kind of said, well, I got a little bit of work I'd like to do. Can she wait till, 20 minutes, 30 minutes before I go get her? And Ellen said, no, she really sounded like she wanted to come home. So I went and I got her. And I live up a canyon. So as I came down the hill, I'm stopped at the light and I see this car racing down the highway, splitting lanes, creating new lanes, traversing on shoulders, just really driving like a maniac at 70, 80 miles an hour.
70 or 80 miles an hour?
At 5:30 in the afternoon.
And, again, for our listeners and viewers, the roads that he is talking about are narrow, one way for the most part, roads, like through any small town. Not they aren't like a wide boulevard by any means, right?
Yeah. And I thought to myself, wow, this is not going to end well. And, obviously there were no sheriffs around because they would have been chasing him.
Right.
And never thinking that not ending well would be me. You never think these things happen to you. You always think they happen to the other person. Right. And I got to an area on PCH, which is where Heather Cliff meets Pacific Coast Highway. It's just before Zuma Beach. And that car was overturned. And I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, I got to get by before the highway gets closed. And for a split second, I said, well, Emily was supposed to be there. Nah, she's where we're supposed to meet. And I go to the shopping mall where we're supposed to meet, or shopping center. It's not really a mall, a strip mall. And no Emily. And I go, this is weird. So I text Ellen. I said, can you check to see if she's at the family's house? I didn't have their number with me. So Ellen texts me back and says, no, she left. And then I'm going, this is really weird. And I see the sheriffs. I pulled up and there's a whole bunch of action happening around the car. So I start walking to it. As I'm walking to it, Ellen calls me back and says, Emily's been in an accident. The sheriffs want to airlift her to Children's Hospital. And I said, just tell the sheriffs to hold on. I'm right there. I'll come there. And tell them they can't airlift her without me going with her. Because it's Saturday afternoon. We're easily a half hour, if not an hour, away
Right.
from getting to the hospital.
Exactly that. The traffic in Malibu at that time of day on PCH would be dead stop, right?
Right. And on top of which, they're not going to be able to do anything without permissions. She's
True.
a minor.
Right.
So I said, tell the sheriff that. And I go up and I find one of the sheriffs there and I tell him who I am. And I'm trying to find out what has happened to him. Did she break a leg? Is it serious? And no one will tell me. And finally, the sheriff says, okay, I'm going to take you to where we're airlifting her. And you can hop in there. So we get to Zuma Beach, to a big wide open area. And the EMT has a wagon. They're working on her. And I open the door to the wagon and they quickly close it shut. And I stand out there and I wait.
Oh,
and
my
about 10
gosh,
minutes.
Michelle, I can't even, that is a parent's worst nightmare. I mean, oh my goodness.
There's no one I hate in the world to wish it upon.
Oh,
There's just, it's a nightmare. And the thing is, it's a nightmare that doesn't end because you then have to learn to live with it. And I'm 14 years in at this point. So I'm
but
much
at the
different.
time, you're standing there, you know your daughter is in there, you're not getting any information, and you're just waiting. So at what point did they airlift her, or what happened then?
Well, at one point, the back door opens and an EMT comes out and he turns to me and he says, I'm very sorry, but there was nothing we could do. And obviously that was, devastating. And to add salt to the wound, I immediately call my wife.
Oh my gosh.
And she thinks I'm Emily, calling her crying. And the EMT takes the phone to explain what's going on. And as I say, I was one way at 5:59, April 3rd, and I was another way at 6 o'clock for the rest of my life.
For the rest of your life.
And it's easier to talk about. It's still heart-wrenching. I used to break down quite a lot, and I talked very openly about it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, anybody out there, it is your worst nightmare, and you can hear it in your, of course. And it's just, it's that simple twist of fate that you just can't even, there's no words. But after all this started to come to fruition and you learned, what did you learn about the driver? Because you saw it, so you knew what had happened, correct? Or how did it come out of what actually happened?
What happened right away was we were told not to speak to anyone at the scene because it was an investigation. It was a murder investigation. And if anyone found out that we had spoken to a witness or something like that, it would have been like witness tampering. And so we had to kind of sequester ourselves from what happened. And we really only found out what happened when we were in court. But
really? And oh my gosh. So no law enforcement told you there or at the hospital or anywhere, well, Mr. Shane,
no hospital. She was taken to the
True.
Unfortunately, she was taken to the morgue.
But so law enforcement never kind of sat you down before then?
No, they did 100%. They told us. I became very close to one of the detectives who ended up being my rep when we went to the parole hearing.
Oh, great!
Because you're allowed one rep each to help address the case against the guy, and he had retired from the police force, from the sheriff.
So he could go. So he could go with you.
So he could go. And the other thing he said, which was ironic, he said, I'm used to doing investigations where to get a witness is, near impossible. But he said, in your situation, we had people coming out of the woodwork willing to testify and tell what was going on. I mean, I had 6 911 calls because he drove 17 miles and he was driving so erratically that other drivers picked up the phone and called 911 to say, you've got to watch this guy. You got to stop this guy.
Oh my gosh. So, did it come out? Was he on drugs? What happened to him? Physically.
Physically, he wasn't hurt at all.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, nothing. I mean, he claims he was trying to commit suicide. Now, I claim that he was trying to commit suicide the way a kid says, I hate you, I'm going to run away. He drove through canyons, Topanga Canyon to be exact, from the top of Topanga Canyon down to Pacific Coast Highway. And on Pacific Coast Highway, on your right side, you have mountains. On your left side, you have the ocean. So he could have
right.
slammed.
And down Topanga Canyon is very windy. And there's cliffs and boulders. And you want to hurl yourself off there, it'd be pretty darn easy. There's
1,000 places where he could have killed himself.
Right.
But he drove down, and then he drove the length of Pacific Coast Highway till Heathercliff. And when he saw Emily, and there was an embankment before a farm by the highway, he aimed for her. So she went 50 feet in the air, hit a metal sign, landed in the grass. His car went up the embankment and turned over.
And did they determine, did he have any drugs or alcohol in his system?
He claimed he was, but his blood was clear. And basically, he was upset with his girlfriend. He had lost his job and, quote unquote, he was going to kill himself. And I think he aimed and killed Emily because he was angry at women at the time.
Did he ever? Okay. So fast forward to actually going back to court the first time, the first time you see him, describe that.
So he's sitting in the courtroom like comatose. And they're playing a game. They're saying, he's on the spectrum. And they discovered that he was on the spectrum when he was 21. He went through normal school, all that. But at 21, they determined he was on the spectrum. So they were playing up the fact that he was autistic and that he wasn't responsible for his actions. And sitting in court, you look at him and he's like this, pretending that nothing's going in. And I'm not going to go through both trials, but in the second trial, the assistant DA was questioning his girlfriend, who was saying that she had called him on a regular basis in prison, or he called her. She pulled the tapes, and you hear him on the tape talking like you and I are right now, planning for the future, and commenting on how the deputy DA was off her game.
Oh, my goodness. And that was played in court?
That was played in court. Luckily,
Fantastic.
they did not play the conversations with the lawyer. They did not play any of this stuff that could taint the testimony. She just played clips to show what he was like. And then the second thing that basically sealed the conviction was an EMT was on the stand, and they said, "What did he say to you when you saw him?"
And at the scene, you mean at the accident when he approached him? Right.
I meant to kill her.
What?
And obviously the defense attorney jumps up and says, "This is the second trial. How is that possible that you are saying this now?" And the guy goes, "No one asked me the question in the first trial."
Oh my goodness.
And basically that was it. He was convicted.
Right. So how long did they give him? What did they charge him with?
So second degree murder, not premeditated. And he got 15 to life.
And so, as we fast forwarded it, I needed you to tell the whole story so that our listeners and viewers can really feel and understand as we move forward in this conversation, the history and emotion behind all this. So, how, now that, the parole hearing, I can't believe how many years had he served before he got his first parole hearing? 10. Okay. And so then,
sorry.
Go ahead.
And so, Los Angeles got a quote unquote progressive DA, George Gascon, who,
see you later.
God,
sayonara, Gascon.
He's gone.
Bye-bye.
Couldn't be happier.
Right.
I was really against him. I helped in the recall campaign. But listen, he was who was elected.
Right.
So luckily we now have removed him, and Hoffman is now the new DA, and he's
many prosecutors, people, crime victims, everyone in Los Angeles is breathing a sigh of somewhat
absolutely.
relief.
The deputy DAs were like, this guy's cutting us off at the knees.
Oh, I know.
They were winning cases, and he was releasing them from prison.
I know. I belong to many a Facebook page with all those DAs and prosecutors, so I heard many a story for the last at least 5 years. So anyway, we digress.
Right.
So bottom line is he still is in prison.
So yes. So he has now spent 14 years in prison. We had the third parole hearing this past October, where he was granted parole once again. And it's like the parole board is an outlier. They do what they think is right.
Correct.
And it's defying in the sense that he's not even in general population. He is in a facility,
a halfway
for
house,
mental health and addiction.
Yes, that's what they do when they get paroled. They go into quote unquote halfway houses.
No, he's in it since he's been in prison.
Oh, he never actually went to an actual prison? He went to one of those...
Right at the very beginning, and then they moved him over to this facility. So he's in a prison. I mean, it's a serious prison. The facility part that he's in is in the mental health and drug addiction facility.
Okay.
So,
and he is still there?
He is right now. I mean, but think about this for a second. The parole board is paroling someone who A, has to be on meds all the time, and B, is in a mental health facility. Okay? And murdered a child. Does that make sense?
Has he been rehabilitated? Is he going to make smart personal safety choices when he gets out? I know, but we're going to have to do a whole nother show on this because I'm very familiar. I was a stalking victim, obviously stalked and kidnapped, and he went off to prison. He was sentenced to 8 years, 10 months, but he was out in 4. Was on parole in a halfway house and had a monitoring bracelet. Well, he cut off his bracelet and took off, and suffice it to say, a few weeks later, they did arrest him and he went back to prison, but did not serve the remainder of his sentence because at the time, Willie Brown, we're talking California politics now, but did away with when you violate parole, you go back and serve the remainder of your sentence. No, he went back and served 1 year, violated again, served another year, violated again, and then it was up and he's free. So that'll be our next crusade, Michelle, is we'll get on to the whole parole thing, because I wanted to do that forever. But I digress, because this show is about Emily and PCH. So let's keep on that one. So just to fast forward, so that is where he is. But in all that time, as I say with this show, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. You and your wife had a fire within you that started, and you created the Emily Foundation, right?
The Emily Shane Foundation, yes.
Emily Shane Foundation. But with that came this passion for PCH, right? And making our streets more safe. So going back to, what you and I just helped pass in the state of California, before that, you made an amazing movie called 21 Miles in Malibu. And I encourage everybody out there to watch this movie. First of all, it's so fascinating. I was so riveted to the history of PCH. And I want you to talk just a little bit about that. But I encourage everybody to watch it, because it will truly open your eyes. And these kinds of roads and things are all over our country. That's the reason that we at Blue Line Solutions do these automated speed enforcement zones, because we're so passionate about it, because these are needed all over our country. And, as cars get faster, as technology gets this and that, these are needed. So let's just go back. And how did you get the idea and start, creating the film 21 Miles in Malibu?
So first off, I'm sorry to disappoint, but the film is not available.
Damn it. Okay.
Because
we'll
I'm
talk
doing
about
an
that.
I'm doing an educational initiative, because before I get into it, the reason it's not available is that to change society and to change our relationship with the road, it's a learned behavior. And I want to use a film with a therapist, with law enforcement, to go into schools and basically have a discussion, show the film, and kind of bring an awareness to kids in 8th and 9th grade. So that when they are driving, it's sitting in the back of their mind. And the idea of hitting the gas becomes secondary and not primary.
Right.
And it goes to seat belts, smoking, and drinking and driving. Those are all learned behaviors.
Texting and driving, all of it, right?
Right.
And the thing is, don't you remember, woman of a certain age, when we had driver's education in school? This is a huge issue, you guys, across the country. I have 3 boys. They're all, they all have their driver's license now. But the point is, when we took driver's ed in school, it was like a, quarter semester, whatever, long class where you went in and you had the simulators, you learned to drive, you learned the rules, the rules of the road. Then you went out with your football coach or PE teacher that taught driver's ed, and you got in the car with your buddies, and, everybody practiced driving. Now you have to pay some driving school. The kids just learn about it in a book, and they're not prepared. I'm going to be honest with you. My kids are 32, 28, and 24. I would need like a Valium to get in the car with them. I can't do it. It's too scary. But I mean, they're good drivers. It's just, I just kind of feel like these kids are not getting the fundamentals of learning how to drive safely before they get their licenses and they're out on the road, right? So what I was going to say is, when we did our driver's ed, there was that movie. Do you remember Red Asphalt? And it was just this hideous movie of all these car crashes, and they showed the actual, gore of it, and it was kind of like a Scared Straight thing, right? But it was real. Yours is a kinder, gentler version of that, but a 100%. Very poignant one, right?
Well, so my film is, first of all, it gives you the history of Malibu, which is very interesting because
it is.
I've shown it to people that have lived here, 50 years, and they've gone, oh, wow, I didn't know that. So that to me was like a real positive. And then we tell my story and one other story. And then we go to the problems and the reason that the film was made. And the reason the film was made was actually, it was 2012. And it was one of those summers out here where every other week someone was dying, or the highway was closed, or there was a terrible crash, or just, and I'm sitting in my office kind of going, wait, what? How is this why isn't anybody doing anything about this? And being a person that I've been like this my whole life, unfortunately. Okay, then I'll do it.
Right, right.
And I decided to make this movie because that's what I do. So what's the best way to communicate? I'll do a documentary about Pacific Coast Highway. And I was very cognizant that it wasn't a woe me film about my terrible tragedy, because that doesn't serve any purpose except to, I don't need to do that.
Right.
So I brought in a director and we put it all together. It took a number of years for a number of reasons. I went through 5 directors. I was doing it part-time, but we finally finished it last year, October of last year.
Right.
And we started going to film festivals, and it started winning awards.
Right. It really.
And I was like, wait, what? I released it at film festivals, going, okay, I'll do a couple film festivals, and then I'll sell it to a streamer, I'll put it up online or whatever, and that'll be the end of it. I'll move on to my next project. And while I was doing this, the 4 senior girls from Pepperdine were killed. And the reason that was so poignant was two. One is 4 women died at the very same moment.
At the same time. Just to back it up, I don't know if, again, our listeners and viewers, this happened a year ago in the spring, correct?
November.
Say it again?
Actually, October 17th.
October 17th, so it's been a year. And when, I'm not sure when this podcast is going to get up and going. But anyway, suffice it to say, it's been within the last year and a half. And 4 great they were seniors at Pepperdine.
Yep.
And they were all in a car together. They were getting out of the car. They were out of the car.
They were standing at the side of the road. The guy who hit them was going 104 miles an hour in a residential part of Malibu.
Right.
Lost control, slammed into parked cars.
That was it.
Slammed into them.
That was it. I was thinking they were getting out of their parked car, but they were just standing on the side of the road, and all of them at the same time gone.
Right.
And
and that's what made it so poignant for us, because it was kind of wrong place, wrong time, kind of like what happened with Emily.
Simple twist
If
of
Emily
fate.
had been 5 minutes later or 2 minutes later or earlier, she'd be alive today.
Right. And what was so poignant about, when we were up sitting in front of the state Senate to get this legislation passed, one of their roommates testified with us, and she had in front of her a picture of each one of the girls. And I'll tell you, between your story and her story, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. I mean, the 2 of you really made an impression on those state senators, and really, because we're now going to have these speed zones on PCH, you played a huge part in saving people's lives down the road. So wait, moving forward, so we're almost out of time here. Tell me about the Emily Shane Foundation.
So the Emily Shane Foundation, Emily struggled. She had a learning disorder. She was very creative, very bright girl, but what she read and what she wrote kind of had a disconnect. She could talk to you about it. She just learned differently. And we felt in our relationship to it all, we went, we had tutors, specialists, blah, 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 to try to help her. And we found that the best person to help her were university students. It was almost because A, they were relatable, and B, she could kind of see herself as that person later. So when we started the foundation, which my wife started, we started a division called the C program, Successful Educational Achievement. And what that is we go into middle school and we take kids that are failing or struggling. We put them together with a mentor tutor, no charge. The foundation pays for it. And they meet at least 2 hours a week, twice a week, an hour each, sometimes a little bit longer. And that tutor mentor becomes their big brother, big sister, in the sense that it's not just about school. It's about teaching them how to study, teaching them all sorts of simple things. Think about it for a second. Remember when you went to first grade? You went to school, you were given homework, and you were told to go home and do it. No one showed you how to do
No one
homework.
showed you how to do it. Right.
You just kind of, okay.
Right.
Yeah. 90% of the population figures it out. We're dealing with that other portion.
Right. What a fabulous way to honor Emily.
Right.
And, and again, just to kind of wrap things up, it's just, our path is our path, and things happen in life, and we all know this. But there's no comfort. There's no rhyme or reason to why this happened to Emily and your beautiful family, right? But instead of, for everybody out there that is going through something, incredible tragedy, just, if you can just hold on, like Michel and his family and other people who have turned tragedy into something that is a positive force. Because again, the loved ones that are gone, what is the best way to honor them? By making change, by making positive change. And I thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story and sharing life about Emily. Before we go, got like 30 seconds, I want you to share with me your favorite, funniest memory about Emily.
My favorite funnies. There's so many.
Pick one.
The best is she got dogs for us. She texted a picture of this dog, Jack Russell, half black and white face, and asked Ellen, can we get a dog? And Ellen went, no, we're not getting a dog. It's like a kid. It's all that. And she said, well, let's just go see them. And Ellen fell in the trap. And
right.
Emily has two older sisters who wanted dogs also, and they didn't get them.
Yeah.
But Emily came home from there with two dogs.
Emily knew how to play it. Let's just say that.
She was great. She was great. She had passion for whatever she did.
I love it. Well, thank you again so much for sharing your story. And I look so forward, hopefully, to working with you and everybody in Malibu on this incredible, wonderful speed zone, automated speed enforcement project and PCH in the near future. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Talk soon.
Thank you.
All right. So on behalf of SafetyChick Rules, everybody out there, remember, something tragic happens. Always remember that person, whatever it is, and turn a negative into a positive. Till next time.
We love her. Yeah.